Salve e benvenuti alla terza premiazione annuale di fine stagione Anglo-Italian Pod Serie A. Come sempre mi chiamo Ruairi e sono affiancato dal mio carissimo amico
Adam! And I'm not going to say that in Italian because I don't have a clue. But never mind. It's all good. How are we doing, Rory, today?
I am very good. I thought I'd try an Italian intro with it being this Serie A end of season awards. If you have any complaints about my pronunciation or I got anything wrong, please don't let me know. My confidence cannot take it. But welcome to the Anglo-Italian Pod. And this week it is, in fact, our Serie A end of season awards, much like the Premier League show last weekend. If you've not heard it, go to our Spotify, YouTube, you'll be able to find it, where we will be handing out the awards of, now very quickly, Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, Goal of the Season, Manager of the Season, Flop of the Season, Surprise Player, Surprise Team, the memeable moment, and the funniest moment. Adam, how are you doing? And are you ready to go through these awards?
Yeah, I'm keeping very well, but I'm very much looking forward to doing our Italian section. It feels like it's been a long time since we've talked or discussed about Serie A football, so I'm looking forward to reminiscing about so many things, including Napoli and that special season. So let's get into it.
I feel like there's going to be a little bit of Napoli. So listeners, we will see you, and viewers, we will see you on the other side for the awards.
My name is Massimo Morales, and you are listening to Anglo-Italian Podcast.
And benvenuti ancora. Welcome again. It is time for the Serie A end of season awards. Finally, it's what we've all been waiting for. And to kick us off, we are going to start with Goal of the Season. Now, we did have some nominations. Let me go through them. I think, as I find them, I should have really prepared this already. Adam, who are your nomination? What is your nomination for Goal of the Season?
I've got two, and I don't know if it was just freak that they were against the same side here, but Rory, I'm going to give you the options here. So I've got Nicky Gonzalez, who had a fantastic left-footed shot on the turn for Fiorentina against Lazio. And then the other one, Rory, is a certain player that was in your Calcio side. It was Marin for Empoli versus Lazio. Again, this was where they were 2 behind. They managed to bring it to 2-2, and it was Marin with the equalising goal. Again, thunder blast plus the goalkeeper at the time. And yeah, Lazio just seemed to be the unlucky side on this occasion for 2 of these magnificent goals. I had to remind myself before we actually did this recording of how good these goals were, because one of them is a mazy run in Nico Gonzalez, and then the other one is just a fantastic kind of taken volley from the edge of the area, especially against the run of play, because it was basically a corner that kind of gets defended by the Lazio defence, and Marin just shakes the back of the net with this incredible shot. But Rory, what about your nominations?
Well, funnily enough, one of mine is also against Lazio, and it is Theo Hernandez doing his customary seasonal coast-to-coast as he ran from one length of the pitch to the other to fire it into the top corner at the San Siro for AC Milan. I think that's my main nomination, but I did enjoy the Marin goal because Marin scored some absolute bangers this year. Every goal, he didn't score many, but every goal he scored was fantastic. From Fede Farco, he nominates the Cavara goal versus Atalanta, which was an absolute screamer as well, and Pedro versus Hellas Verona. Joe Spagnoli says Kvaratskhelia against Atalanta again. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the scorer of fantastic goals, but not the fantastic scorer, Candreva. Now, we could pick a handful of Candreva's goals this year because he has scored some screamers. But I think the one that really caught the eye was the little Zlatan-esque finish against Roma at home. Candreva's been a delight. Salernitana have been a delight. They might get a mention later on in the show. But do you remember the Candreva's handful of beautiful goals?
There's been many, hasn't there? There's been a few this season, and that one in particular, I do remember. He kind of just flicks it beyond Rio Patricio in the goal, And he's just kind of standing there, just doesn't know what to anticipate. But I remember the crowd going absolutely mental because, like, Salernitana don't have much to shout about, but they certainly do with Paulo Sousa and Candreva. So, they've been living it up in the last sort of 4 to 5 months recently. And, I mean, that was a superb finish. That was a superb one. I want to kind of bring it back as well. Kvaratskhelia, that one is definitely a good shout. I did forget about how good that was because if you remember, that was about the 70th minute, if I remember rightly. It was quite late in the game. And I think this was at a time when Atalanta were kind of frustrating Napoli away. But yes, that was a fantastic, amazing run that kind of ended up with a classy finish. If you remember, that was kind of the goal that kind of helped them confirm the title as well. They obviously still had a few games to go, but that was one of the games where you felt like the title's going to Naples. The title is going to Naples, and that was a fantastic goal.
It was one of those moments where he proved that he could become like a clutch player as well, where he could step up in those moments and be like, no, I'm taking the game, I'm winning the game here. I think that was a really huge moment. Yes, really, really enjoyed that Kvara goal. I do also want to say from Atalanta, there's been so many good goals in Serie A this year. Coop Miners versus Monza, where he just absolutely pings it from the halfway line over the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper's definitely a little bit further out than he should be, but it's still a very, very good finish. And I wanted to give a little shout out to a goal I really enjoyed towards the end of the season as well, which was Udam versus Bologna in the game where he got 2 goals for Lecce in what was a massive result for them. And he had a volley, kind of side volley angle around the defenders into the top corner. Really beautiful finish. But I think my nomination is going to be Candreva versus Roma, just for the audacity of it and because it's Candreva.
Ooh, I'm split now. I do feel like, as much as I love Candreva, I'm almost tempted to go Kvara, but then I wonder if you have it in your sleeve that you might give him a different award. I might, just for sympathy votes and the fact that Candreva probably won't win any of the other awards, including Young Player of the Season, I might go with you.
Well, there we go. Our first award against all odds is Candreva doing his tribute to Zlatan and scoring against Roma. An incredible, incredible finish, but one of a collection of great goals he scored. Congratulations, Antonio. We hope to see you again next year in an ever-improving Salernitana team. I can't wait to talk about them later because I have a lot to say about them later. But the next award we're going to be moving quickly on to is Player of the Season. Now, there are 2 very clear kind of nominations here, but to go through other people's nominations, we have Player of the Year, Osimhen. Not a surprise there. The North Curve say Osimhen. Joe Spagnoli says Kvaratskhelia. Fede Farca says Osimhen. And I say Osimhen. Adam, have you got anyone else to throw into the hat?
I've got actually 3 players that could be discussed here, and they're all from the same team. So I've got Osimhen, I've got Lobotka, and I've got Anguissa, all for different reasons. But I do you know what? The number one I've got on my list was Lobotka, because I think as much as you can have the goals, as much as you can have the flair of Kvara, without Lobotka being that kind of linchpin in that midfield, he breaks up the play, he helps those kind of attacks happen. He's been superb this season. I think he's upped his levels from last season. And I think without him, the rest doesn't happen. The rest doesn't happen to the same extent, especially in that early stages where they kind of were unstoppable. I think as much as Kvara was taking it on the wings and he seemed unstoppable there, Osimhen with his goals. And don't get me wrong, Osimhen, the levels that he's increased from the previous season, he's been more consistent. It's helped that he hasn't been as injured prone, should we say, this season. And that's definitely helped him. And I think, he's going to be a solid player wherever he is next season. But I'm just going to stamp my case for Lobotka. I think, he's been superb and deserves all the plaudits. What about you?
I really like the Lobotka shout, but of the 3 players you mentioned, if I was going to put someone second, it would be Anguissa, because as you know, and as long-term listeners of the pod will know, I absolutely love that man. I think the the completeness that he's shown to his game over the last 2 seasons, really, since joining Napoli. The both defensive and attacking side of the game. The attacking side of his game is coming more into it. He's picked up a few more goals this year. He's making a few more late runs into the box and kind of progressing with the ball a little bit more. I feel like he's had a little bit more freedom in that system this year, whereas opposed to last year, he was kind of relied on to be that ball winner, the kind of anchor man in midfield. So I think we've really seen a whole new side to his game. His close control, his strength, his passing ability, his vision, like everything about him, I've just been super, super impressed. I think he's a player as equally as important as Lobotka, without a doubt. And when he was out injured he was out injured for a short while, wasn't he? I think, and I think they did miss him. So I think he's a huge player for that team, and I think I would put him second behind who I'm going to push pretty hard as the player of the year, which is Victor Osimhen. We're going to talk about him in our team of the years as well, I suppose. But I was doing a bit of research into statistics to try and back up my argument, and in all the attacking statistics, so shots on target, goals scored, XG. Chances created, shots on target, shots converted, everything. He was in the 99th percentile, so he's leading the league in everything he does in an attacking sense. We've seen the ridiculous goals he scored from tight angles, the headers where he seems to jump 11 foot in the air, his ability to control balls no matter where they come at him and at what pace. I just think he's shown this year why Napoli paid that much money for him. So I think when they did spend 90 million on him, I think it was from Lille, it was a lot of money. And he came in and he was injured for the first 2 seasons, didn't really get going. And I think there was a real question of people knew there was a player there, but people were maybe starting to go, okay, is this just going to be a flop now? At what point do we talk about this as a flop? Because it is a lot of money, especially for a club like Napoli. They spend a bit of money, but for a Serie A team to drop that much money on a striker, it doesn't happen often, right?
No.
But I think this is really the season that he's coming and showing them exactly why they've spent that amount of money, and they'll easily make a profit on him. I think we could still see him there next year. But this season, he's just been an absolute revelation, and having him in my Fantacalcio has been an absolute delight, and he single-handedly delivered me the title, so thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
But what are your main memories of Osimhen this year? I think he is going to be the player of the season, right?
I think so. I think he's not just your typical target man, if that makes sense. I think he's just been so much more skillful, just even with the close play. Like, there's been occasions where the ball hasn't necessarily come to him in the sense that he could easily turn around and score the goal. And I think the other context, Rory, whilst you were talking about it, and something I think we should just remind everyone that is watching this right now and maybe listening, he played with that face mask for half a season. Obviously, for the beginning of the season, he didn't have to worry about his cheekbone injury. So once he had that cheekbone injury, that obviously changes the dynamic of how he plays, and it hasn't affected his mentality about his approach and how he's gone about it. He's still put his head in there when possibly people were wincing and hoping he wouldn't get anything else done to him, basically. So the fact that he's been brave enough to kind of do those kind of headers, flick-ons, and just getting stuck in, I think that tells you testament about the guy. But yeah, some of the goals he's scored has been spectacular. I mean, that is why, I suppose, he's one of the most wanted men in Europe now. He's just the complete striker in some senses. And I think he deserves to be kind of on that pedestal now going forward. I mean, if we're talking about the top strikers, I'm sure Haaland will get all applauded, but Osimhen's not that far off now. He is getting closer and closer every time. I think if you think what other elements that Osimhen could improve on, he's not far behind Haaland, and I think it'll be very interesting. I appreciate there's Mbappe in the conversation as well, but I don't think he's had the same sort of levels as, say, Osimhen and Haaland in the most recent season. So, yeah, the more we talk about it, Rory, I feel like it's going to be another one that we kind of concede. It is definitely Osimhen that wins this.
It has to be. It has to be. He broke the record this year for the most goals by an African player in Serie A, taking the record away from George Weah. Like, he's broken, even away from the football pitch, the borders and barriers he's broken in this country in terms of race relations and stuff is just incredible. Like, there's kids now in a country in Italy that isn't the most open-minded and is racist at times. There's now a generation of kids growing up idolizing a black man, which is just incredible. And like, there was a video, I can't remember who the journalist was. I'm really sorry, but he was a Nigerian journalist. I saw it on Twitter, and he was getting a lift from a taxi driver in Naples. They were going for like the game against, was it against Sam? No, the game where they secured the title. Anyway, against Udinese maybe. But he was driving in Naples, and then the Neapolitan taxi driver was just talking to him the whole time, saying how Nigeria and Naples are now twinned countries because this guy has just done so much to like bridge so many in a city as well that has a lot of immigrants, a lot of like a large black community. I think it does mean a lot for someone like that to come and mean so much to the city. So I think it's just beautiful what he's done. And I've thoroughly enjoyed watching him. So I think I'm going to announce Osimhen as the player of the season. I think that one was quite straightforward, kind of like Haaland. Congratulations, Osimhen. You get the award. There was no surprise there. Kvara was very close. I think he was very close. But yeah, congratulations, Osimhen. Speaking of Kvara, the next award is Young Player of the Season. Now, some of the nominations we have... we have from, I'm trying to find the Italian ones, Young Player of the Season. Fede Farco, he says Udogi from Udinese, or Scalvini. Joe Spagnoli says Kvaratskhelia. And the North Curve says, interesting one, Young Player Zanoli, which is an interesting shout. Okay. Yeah. And Curva Mundial Pod says, Young Player of the Season, Hoyland. Adam, are any of those on your list?
Yes, one of them is, and that's Destiny Udogie. I think he's been superb in that left-hand side, being quite adaptable for Udinese, and his record speaks for himself, like 34 games, 3 goals and 4 assists, so he's been superb in that respect. And it's a shame that he's ending up at Spurs for you, Rory.
Really annoying.
It feels like that is a heck of a signing already.
Yeah.
I think he's got a bright future ahead of him as well for the Italian national squad. I'm surprised he hasn't been called up to many calls in the national squad. So it feels like a missed opportunity for Italy there. But the other one that I was going to put out there is someone that's done quite well recently for the Italian under-20s squad, and that is Tommaso Baldanzi from Empoli. I think he's had a real breakout season, and I appreciate against that kind of shadow of Kvaratskhelia, he's done really well. I feel like he's at a club that he's able to play game time, learn from his mistakes, but he's already kind of on the lips of a lot of those managers around where he could end up. He's already been talked about potentially going to Napoli already. Again, he's had 30 games this season, 4 goals. He's been superb. I think, like, in terms of an exciting young player and prospect, he is someone that I've really enjoyed watching the more and more this season has progressed. But yeah, I think those two will be overshadowed by a certain Kvaratskhelia, unfortunately, when it comes to the comparisons, doesn't it?
It's hard not to. I'm going to delay the Kvaratskhelia talk a little bit because I think he's going to win it, but we need to kind of give some flowers to some other young players as well. Zanoli, I think, is a really interesting shout because he's a player that was on loan from Napoli, I believe, to Sampdoria. Loan from Napoli, and in a Sampdoria team that obviously looked absolutely piss poor. I remember he came on against, now, who were they playing? I think they were playing someone towards the bottom of the league. Maybe it was Cremonese at home. But I was watching Sampdoria and they were struggling bravely, but they were losing. They just had a player sent off. And Zanoli came on and instantly stood out. He just instantly, his touch on the ball, his close control, his ability to find space, he just instantly stood out as the best player on the pitch. And I thought, holy crap, who is this guy? And I think 100%. Every time I've seen him, he's looked like a very, very exciting player. And I think for him to go back to Napoli now, and for them to have another option as a creative midfielder, there's a bit of energy in that midfield is really exciting. So he's a player I'm very, very excited about. I think if he hadn't been in that Sampdoria team playing that type of football or that badly, maybe he would have stood out a bit more and more people would have noticed him. But I really wanted to give him a shout out. And I also wanted to say, no one's really mentioned him, but Bove from Roma, I thought he's done a really good job this year. I think he's a player that Roma fans didn't know how to feel about for a long time, and they were always like, what does he do? He doesn't really do a lot. But I think what he does is all the dirty work. And when we talked to Joe Spagnoli as well, he absolutely loves him because the amount of effort he puts into the pitch. I think he's made more appearances than most people would have anticipated this season. I think Roma have used him more than they thought they might. But I think that's because of his performances, and he's done so well. So I think he's another player that deserves a shout. But we need to talk both Højlund and Kvaratskhelia. Should we start with Højlund? Because his season finished quite quietly because of the injuries, but he was really exciting at the start of the season, right?
I think there was a lot of hype with him. And don't forget, the reason, and this is one of the reasons why I'm going to not consider him for this award, is because I think it took him a little while to get adapted to Gasperini, Atalanta, and obviously Serie A. I think it's taken him the best part of 6 months before we saw the best of him. Because I think there's definitely a huge prospects on anyone's hands right now. There's rumours that he's obviously going to be snapped up by a bigger side already, but I'm hoping that he has another season at Atalanta personally, because I think if he can get that under his belt, be consistently scoring again for Atalanta, boy, have we got an exciting prospect in the league. I mean, he's got the whole package in that respect. He feels like he's a clone of Haaland. Almost sounds like Haaland when you kind of think about the name. Just whistle it a little bit and a few times and you might get Haaland out of it. But it's just, I don't really consider it because he's not done it consistently for the duration of the season. Compared to the likes of Zanoli, for example, where, yes, I appreciate what you're saying about the fact that he's at a lower side. But I've also seen him against Juventus, for example. There was a really good, when I told you about the time when Sampdoria were getting back into the game and giving Juventus a game or run for their money in Turin. That was the performance of Zanoli there as well. He was superb that night. Rasmus Højlund, don't get me wrong, he's scored some superb goals and he's been, I think, lethal in front of goal as well once he's got adapted to it. But yeah, I'm not going to dispute that guy is a hell of a prospect. Looking forward to it.
He's got the Haaland profile a little bit as well because he's big, he's strong, he's fast. He looks Nordic. Like, he does look like the Pro Evo version of Haaland. And that's not to be disrespectful to him. I love Pro Evo, but it does feel like they're just a whisker away. And it's no wonder that Manchester United and all them are already being linked to him. I think he's been fantastic. But yeah, get him another season, another 2 seasons in Serie A, full seasons under his belt. But an incredible start to his Serie A career and instantly one of the most exciting strikers in the league. So a fantastic start for him. Definitely. But I think I'm going to have to push hard again here, Adam, and just say that Kvara gets Young Player of the Season. Because I remember all the way back in July, August, I was doing research for the pod, and I was sat watching all the signings, like YouTube videos of every signing of every Serie A team to see who to look out for, right? I had great fun. But I remember watching Kvaratskhelia, right? And I had to remind myself I was like, no, it's the Georgian League. It's the Georgian League, right? The standard isn't that great. This guy can't be that good. Yeah. And then I saw him just off both feet, like pinging it top corner, beating men no matter where he was on the pitch. It seemed like the ball was his and everyone else was just there to like try and get in the way. And I just watched this video and I must have watched it 2 or 3 times. I was like, this kid is unbelievable. Like, if he even starts slightly like this, Napoli have got a hell of a player. And I know he was getting a bit of attention while he was out in Russia because he was playing for Dynamo Moscow, right? And then he had to leave. Or he got to leave because of the conflict. And Napoli was so good in snapping him up quickly because he was starting to get attention. But I think he still kind of came from nowhere for most people. No one expected him to be this good. And like, what were your first impressions of? I just remember from the first game being like, holy crap, this guy's unbelievable.
I'm with you. I don't think I necessarily thought it would be a player that would do so well this season. I remember there's still that clipped video of us two talking about Kvaratskhelia and you trying to take the piss of me trying to pronounce his name at the time, which I wasn't that far off at the time, but didn't still get it completely right. But yeah, I think both of us were of the mindset of he's a player that will break through this season, but maybe not necessarily have the game time. You know, we thought Spalletti would, maybe bide his time with him, but he's been undroppable. He's been that impressive. And I think the big point is that he's, as you've said, so strong on both feet. And at one point, I think we were both kind of wondering, who's going to stop this guy? Like, what are they're going to have to do what the top players do and have two people marking him out of the game. And subsequently, that kind of started to happen after January, didn't it? It's kind of was a double up teamwork from Inter Milan that kind of started it all off. And they kind of started to show that Kvaratskhelia had to kind of bring himself out of it. He needed to work a way around it. And he's going to get that now for the duration of his career, I suspect. I think, if anything, the summer's welcome addition in the sense of he's going to have some time to rest. But he's also potentially going to be the type of guy that will work on those little areas that he didn't get the better of certain defenders. And I feel like there's elements of his game, like maybe get a bit more stronger, for example, physique-wise. And I think just being a bit more clever. There's been the times where he's been kind of staying on the wings, but maybe he needs to do that little bit of magic by coming inside and maybe doing a little bit more for the team itself. But that said, this is where we're just nitpicking, Rory. We're nitpicking at little things now. And this is incredible for a guy that's, 21 years old, set Serie A on fire. This talent already automatically pays itself. He's more than just the money that Napoli have spent. And it's an incredible bit of business. Well done to the scout that noticed him. Let's put it that way. And Napoli are just laughing. They are laughing. But Kvaratskhelia could not be more happier for the guy, because you can tell he's embraced the city, he's embraced Napoli, and he's going to become basically a Maradona-esque figure if he carries on like this, right? If he does another season like this, this guy could go on to even greater things.
They already absolutely adore him and Osimhen. For their murals to already be on the wall next to Diego is a testament enough to how much they love him. But I think he's just, you're right to talk about how his season ended, because I think a lot of teams did just start doubling up on him, and he did get quite quiet. And I think what that was it was literally the second round of fixtures started, and every team had kind of learnt their lesson and gone, okay, right, now we've got to keep this guy quiet. But that's part of him developing. That's part of him getting used to the level that he's at, and seeing that he's going to have to find other ways to figure these defenses out and other ways to make it difficult for him. But I think he's got the ability and the football IQ to be able to do it. And I think next season, he'll now start the season knowing, okay, this is what they're going to do to me. Well, this is how I turn it on them. And I think he does just need to add a few more elements to his game. Like you said, I think cutting inside a bit more, being able to play centrally would be really useful for him as well, I think. So we could switch positions with the front three alongside him. But I think incredible player. So many goals and assists. So key for Napoli in his first season. He could be best newcomer as well if there was an award. But I think young player of the season, it has to be Kvaratskhelia. Congratulations, Kvicha. Well done. Fully well earned. Nice. Good. Definitely. Okay, so the next award coming up is Manager of the Season. Now, another one. Napoli can't keep doing this.
Can't avoid it.
I'm going to say the nominations that we have from our friends. We do have from Curva Mondial Pod, Manager of the Season, Spalletti. North Curve says Manager of the Season, Spalletti. Joe Spagnoli says Manager of the Season, Spalletti. Fede Farco says Manager of the Season, Spalletti. And then Footlol says Spalletti. Now, I feel like Spalletti's going to get it, but what I want to do is throw a few more names into the hat, Adam, or any of these names on your list. I've gone for Sousa from Salernitana, because I think he needs a shout. Palladino from Monza, and Marco Baroni from Lecce for keeping them up. Or were any of those names on your list, or do you have any other names to throw into the ring?
No, there's two on my list. One of them was Maurizio Sarri, and the other one was Max Allegri. No, I'm only joking. No, it's definitely Luciano Spalletti.
Max.
No, but I think Maurizio Sarri deserves a shout, just because I think the context is Lazio were not necessarily expected to be in the top half of that top four mix, shall we say. And I think he's done a superb job when you consider, I felt in the summer, they had got rid of a lot of players that I thought actually are they doing the right thing here? They're losing some big names. There was a few players that I wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, they're missing out too much. But he started to kind of curve this kind of place of attitudes that was there. Like he replaced the goalkeeper quite quickly. Provedel came in, for example. He didn't initially play, if you remember. It was only because of how bad the other replacement came in, had a debut, and then got replaced by Provedel and never looked back. But also, if you think about how astute Sarri has been with the players, he's rotated certain players. They've stick to a philosophy of playing a certain style, which is Sarri ball. But more importantly, they've got the results along the way. Now, I appreciate they probably could have done a lot more in the European competition stages. It's definitely fair to say. And I think there's been some frustration from Lazio fans on their progress there. But I think just in general, the fact that they've managed to secure the Champions League spots is incredible. And the way they're going to build is obviously through that, by maintaining those positionings. But I think it's key that they've got some big performances out of the likes of Zaccagni, for example, SMS, who I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And then obviously you think about just the likes of Luis Alberto as well. He's had a phenomenal season as well for Lazio, and even defensively, Romagnoli. I mean, if you think about also the kind of backdrop with him, came in from Milan, the laughing stock, but it's been so solid for Lazio to the point that they are behind Napoli in terms of best defensive record in the league. So I think that tells you a lot about Lazio. And don't forget, Sarri got a good result against Spalletti in Naples. He got a phenomenal result against them. One of the very few sides that managed to get a result in Naples. So yeah, I think he deserves a shout, but I think it's going to go one way, Rory. But let's talk about your candidates that you've mentioned. Palladino, I really like that. I really do like that, because given the circumstances, I think how he's come in, bit of a novice, so to speak, and just managed to get out these performances. I mean, this is the story, I think. Monza, what a story that is.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I think he's come in with like a squad, like it was, well, we talked about it ourselves, about how much they'd kind of invested or planned to invest through loan deals if they stayed up, like in that squad. And they had a lot of quality, like Stefano Sensi, if he's ever fit, but like Pessina, and they brought in a lot of really good quality players. And Juan Pablo Mari, but they had just a good level squad, but it didn't seem to be working. They looked like they were going to get relegated. Just something wasn't quite clicking. And he came in and just got this system in place, made them very solid defensively, made them hard to beat, but also got them playing some good counter-attacking football, and able to keep hold of the ball when they needed to as well. They weren't afraid to have the ball. They weren't a team that was afraid to pass it and kind of try to slow a game down, take control of the game a bit. So I think he really did an incredible job there. And they were a team, I think all the teams that got promoted into the league last year were kind of favourites to go down. And for them to not really ever be even close to going down since he took over, there was no talk of it once he took over. It was just, oh yeah, Monza will be fine. Look at them, they all. And you could say if he took over a little bit sooner, maybe they could have pushed up a little bit higher, because they only finished 4 points behind Fiorentina in 8th. And 10 points behind Juve in 7th. So I'm not saying they would have got European spots, but they could have been pushing up towards, top 10, which would have been incredible for their first season. So I think he's done an incredible job there. Now, Paulo Sousa, I know we were kind of taking the piss out of him, and he's a bit of a running joke still, and people aren't quite sure how it's working. But before he took over, Salernitana had 21 points. He's been in charge for 16 games, and they got 21 points. So he doubled their points tally. They won 4 games, drew 9, and only lost 3. Now, we know that they went on that huge unbeaten run as well towards the end of the season, where they just kept, it was win, win, win. It was win, draw, 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 win, draw, 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 win. But they were just getting those results, keeping that run going. And I think, again, he's a manager that's come in, and is it a system? Is it just him galvanizing these players together and getting a mood, a kind of us against them? I don't know what it was like, because I know there's still doubts about Paulo Sousa, and I still look at him and go, I'm not convinced by you. But if any other manager comes in and does that with that Salernitana squad, I'm thinking, okay, well, this guy could be getting jobs higher up the league if this continues. Like, why with Paulo Sousa does it not feel like that?
I think it's because he seems to have a little bit of meltdown where his complex is that I'm higher than this level. And maybe he's been a bit humbled from his previous kind of like spells. And I say this because I was a man that was fully supportive of him for the Polish national side, actually. I felt like he brought in a philosophy of play, like it was attractive enough. I felt we were more attacking and more expansive. Certainly, we felt like we could win games. Like even those games where maybe the opposition have stronger players, there was never that kind of doubt that they were better than us. Like it was a case of, yes, they have got better qualities, but we can play really good football and we can still get a draw or win. And I think maybe that's what he's instilled with Salernitana. But when I'm talking about that complex aspect, remember, he left Poland under shadow. And I know at previous spells with the likes of Swansea, QPR, Leicester City, he hasn't necessarily won those fans over after a period of time. They got like maybe read through his tactics and felt like it was the same old stuff. So maybe he's over time started to realise that this was the last chance to learn. Personally, this is the way I look at it, is that Salernitana probably not the calibre of side that maybe he anticipated, but maybe it was a case of, look, I've managed to annoy quite a lot of chairmen along the line, and that word's spread out. So he needed to win over. I can't get a reference, or the word has got out, basically. So therefore, I need to prove my worth. And I think he's now proved it with Salernitana. I hope he stays there, personally, because I think it'll be very interesting to see what he could build there. But the problem is, Rory, I suspect those players might move on, because if we're talking about certain players, Guillermo Ochoa, he's going to be off, possibly, because I think that was only a loan spell to the end of the season. Dia, who I really like, he's probably going to be snapped up elsewhere. And then you look at the age of the squads. I mean, remember, the likes of Fabio Fazio hasn't played for a while. Gandareva, let's see how many seasons we can get out of him. Piontek, we forget, he was there. He's no longer there. He's back at Hertha Berlin, but whether they're back, probably unlikely based on the comments of what Sosa said with Piontek. So I suspect that's not going to happen. But yeah, I'd be very interested if he could follow it up, if that makes sense, Rory. I know there's the rumours with Napoli, but yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, this is his chance to build something. You're right. This is his chance to say, okay, I've got summer. We've got a bit of Serie A money. We can be clever in the loan market, because for them to bring in a player like Dia that nobody was really looking at, and for him to come in and tear it up so much, like they've obviously got, I think they have got good talent ID. Like this is the team that had Simi as well. I know after he'd kind of smashed it up at Crotone, but they are able to find gems every so often. I think even the Candreva signing, I know it's kind of last chance saloon for him as well, but you're adding that Serie A quality, someone who can score great goals, someone who is just, he's not outstanding, but he's just a good player. And I think if they can just improve the quality of that squad a little bit more, and I think Paulo Sousa does play nice, attractive attacking football, like you said. He did try to get, Salernitana weren't just putting 11 men behind the ball and waiting. They were going for teams, and they did get some big results against Roma and against some of the bigger sides. So I think he really deserves a shout, because he, again, for a team in Salernitana that looked like they were going to get dragged into it, for them to finish, here's my quick maths, 11 points above the relegation zone, and again, never really be in danger. It's just an incredible achievement. Remember, they stayed up the previous season after losing 5-0 at home. They managed to stay up on goal difference or whatever it was, head to head. So I think that to have that level of improvement in one season is incredible. So I wanted to give Paulo Sousa a shout. The Lecce one was a little bit, Marco Baroni was a little bit ambitious, I'll admit, but we do need to talk about the elephant in the room. He's now left. He's gone.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But he did do it. Spalletti has to be manager of the season this season. I don't think anybody looked at that Napoli squad at the beginning of the year and thought, okay, they're going to win the league. I think most people kind of would have said that Milan would have retained the title. They would have said maybe Inter would have pushed them closest. But from the first match day, really, they won their first 10 games in a row, right, Napoli? I think, off the top of my head. And it just from day one looked like they were going to win the league. And it never really even slightly looked close. Can we describe how monumental this season was from Spalletti?
I think it's monumental in his career because I think there was always that little bit that was like, will he ever get a Scudetto? Will he ever win anything? And as much as he won plaudits for previous stuff, how he managed to change the dynamics of Roma, for example, he was obviously tarnished as well for what he kind of managed with Totti, that situation. And I think that was obviously a part of where maybe Spalletti hasn't won too many people in Italy for that alone. But he's a guy of principles, isn't he? He's a guy that sticks to his moral compass. He believes in his squad. I think the fact that he's managed to mold this team into the way that he wanted it. Don't forget, at the beginning of the season as well, that they lost a few players like Koulibaly, for example, and Fabian Ruiz as well. These were big players at the time. Yeah, Insigne is another one as well, who obviously, that was a bit of a weird kind of circumstance, but he decided on his terms that he wanted to go to Toronto. So you're thinking, right, Spalletti has a hell of a job to kind of, build up the quality again and go at it. And I like you, I don't think I anticipated them to be Champions candidates. I definitely had them in top 5, but I think with every Napoli team, you kind of go, oh, they've had a good run, but they're going to have a wobbly. It's going to be around the corner. It always happens in Napoli. And, they have this meltdown, and that's the end of the season for them. But this time he's managed to maintain it, and he's managed to keep them going. And I think what's probably happened is it's a pleasant distraction that they had the likes of the Champions League as well alongside this league campaign. But he's actually, I think, won a lot of friends for the way he's gone about it as well, because there's been plenty of times where I think he could have bit and, got at reporters. I think there was a lot of, not necessarily nasty like commentaries, but certainly a lot of questions marks around how he was managing things potentially. And I think someone like a Mourinho would have kind of turned it and made a sideshow of it, whereas Spalletti's kind of played a long game and gone, it is what it is. I believe in this philosophy. I'm going to stick with it. And I think, he's been absolutely on it. There's been occasions where I feel like his tactics maybe in the latter stages of the Champions League went by the wayside. I think he maybe got a Champions League match against Milan wrong. But that said, if you think about the overall season and how he's gone about it, it's been magnificent. And that probably doesn't even kind of cover off that maybe there was something in the background with De Laurentiis as well. Because although we're knowing about it now, I suspect he would have known a bit about what De Laurentiis was thinking and maybe feeling as well, especially after those Champions League matches. I suspect there was a lot of pressure then. So, full of kudos for the guy. I think he's done magnificently, and he deserves this award, Rory. He deserves it.
Like 1,000,000%. And I think it kind of to mirror what you've said, I'm just delighted for him to get this on his legacy because he was one of the most admired coaches in Italy. He was someone who, now I've said it before, but when he was at Inter, I did not enjoy the football. But when he was at Roma, I really enjoyed the football. And I think he's someone who knows how to get the best out of his squad. But I think just for him to prove those people wrong and go from being, that good coach who plays nice football but doesn't do anything, for him to then achieve this huge thing is just absolutely monumental for him to do it. And Napoli, we've said it before, it just means so much more. Rudy Garcia has some very big boots to fill. I will tell you that. I do not envy him right now. Jesus Christ. But the winner of Manager of the Season is Luciano Spalletti. Oh, congratulations, Luciano. And the next award, here we go. We're going from Manager of the Season to Flop of the Season. Now, some of our nominations, here we go. Flop of the Season, we have Paul Pogba. We have Federico Chiesa. We have Charles de Ketelaere, of course. Joe Spagnoli coming in with Harry Winks. Oh, it's a little bit harsh. A little bit harsh on Harry there. I think Curva Mundial Pod with Serginho Dest. Such a flop that I forgot he was in Serie A, so he could automatically win it, I think. But Adam, were any of your nominations mentioned there?
So yes, one was Charles de Ketelaere. I think he cannot escape how poor that season has been for him, especially given the hype around what he done with Bruges, hot prospects, but he hasn't really managed to switch it on. However, I'm going to discount it purely because I feel like he's a young lad that clearly needs time to adapt. I felt like maybe it wasn't the right environment for him in Milan as well. Potentially he needed to go on a loan spell somewhere just to get some football time. I think that's what he needed. He just needs some football time where, a place like Empoli where he could maybe just not worry about the high pressure environment of the team. Especially, I think we've got to remember, although Bruges are a big side in that Belgium league, nothing compares to Milan. Milan is so much more bigger, and like that environment, it takes a certain mentality. So I suspect that was part of it. And also, don't forget, he's learning different styles, different philosophies here. Pioli obviously did try his best to give him a chance as well. He never gave up on him. So I think there's a determination there to show you that actually there is a prospect there. And I think that's a bit harsh. But Rory, I'm going to put it out there, my flop of the season, Andrea Bellotti. He wasn't mentioned in any of those lists, but he needs to be discussed.
Very good shout. Before we jump on Bellotti, I do need to say, De Ketelera, I do think he was a little bit of a victim of the price tag as well. Like, because Milan did spend a lot of money on him because he was a prospect. But then with Milan being quite strapped for cash, they can't spend that much money on a player and not play them. They can't then ship them out on loan. And I think you're right. He needed that loan move. He needed that, not so much pressure on winning every game, but just getting used to the league and stuff. But I do think still, I've been very disappointed by him. I think still, regardless of that, I think he's not shown even moments of me going, there's the player. I've just seen nothing there. So I think I'd still have him on that flop list, slightly unsympathetically. But Andrea Bellotti is a huge, huge shout. I think he's come in with big Serie A pedigree. Always scored a lot of goals at Torino. A lot of penalties, but always scored a lot of goals at Torino. But he was the main man. The whole team was fitted to him. It was all tailored towards getting him to score goals. At Roma, it has just not worked, has it? Nothing about that has worked. I feel like maybe the manager, there's been a clash there and they just don't, Mourinho's not able to get the best out of him. The fact he's not the number one man, maybe that's part of it, and he knows he's second string to Abraham. Maybe it's the fact that the whole team isn't built around him. But I think it all stood out to me, and I know it's not Serie A, but in the Europa League final, when he came on against Sevilla, it looked like a man whose confidence had not been destroyed. It was just never there. Like, it just looked like an aging guy who, I think I said it to Just Spanioli at the time, he was 30 seconds behind every ball. And I just think all season he's kind of looked like that. And I think there's a lot of mitigating factors, but you still can't get beyond the fact that they're paying him a lot of money. They brought him in to score goals and he didn't get one. Like, your feelings on Bellotti?
Yeah. Much like you've kind of shared already, he comes in with a lot of disappointment when you consider the backdrop of what he could be, the wages that he's on. And I think the other bit, Rory, he spent a lot of time in that summer where he didn't sign up to a club. He was waiting for a specific move that suited him. Now, I appreciate Roma was that club potentially in the end, but actually there was rumours that Atalanta were in for him. There was rumours that, Inter were kind of considering him. There was a number of clubs in Italy that were prepared to sign him, but he decided in the end that Roma was that project. Now, I think there's a bit of naivety on his side as well, because don't forget, Dybala was always linked to Inter, but then obviously when he signed for Roma, that was it. And that was before Bellotti was announced as well. But like you say, I think what's most disappointing is he hasn't even tried some of those games. Like, he looks like, you said it yourself, like, it's not a case of he's shot of like confidence. It just doesn't seem like he's there. It doesn't seem like he's got the right frame of mind to be at the club. And the fact that he hasn't even really contributed, I think, says a lot about him. So, yeah, for me, he's on that kind of same wavelength as Sergino Dest when we're talking about it. You're kind of thinking like, Jesus, did he actually turn up this season? Because if you look at the record books, you go, what happened to him? What was it? Was it injuries? And we know it's not really injuries. It's just that he didn't really perform, and it justifies what Jose is thinking. And I think when you had that conversation with Joe and about potentially extending his contract, can't see any reason why Roma or Jose would entertain it. I think they would look at it and go, what has he brought? He's nothing to the table. So I think he's going to be lucky if he gets anyone in Serie A at this rate really going for him. I mean, it's really difficult. But yeah, is there any other thoughts on your list in terms of like flop of the season?
Well, I think we've kind of decided it's Belotti. I think I was going to go for Pogba, but it feels a bit harsh considering it's been injuries that have kept him back. But
yeah,
he's still been a huge disappointment. But I still don't think he's been the biggest disappointment at Juve, and injuries haven't helped. So I think I'm going to say it has to be Belotti, really, doesn't it? It has to, from what we expected and from what everyone expected to what we got. Like, I picked him up for Fantacalcio because I thought just in case. Yeah. And he has not even been on my bench. Like, I've just forgotten I had him. So yeah, I think, unfortunately, La Gallina, Andrea Belotti, you get our flop of the season. Commiserations or congratulations. Yeah, sorry about that.
Probably congratulations.
Moving on, the next award is going to be Surprise Player of the Season. Surprise Player of the Season. Now, we do have some nominations. Surprise Player, I'm trying to look for a Serie A one. Fede Farco says Di Lorenzo. Joe Spagnoli says Providel. The North Curve says Kvaratskhelia. And Curva Mundial Pod says Kvaratskhelia. I've also put in Lauriente from Sassuolo and Orsolini. And for the first half of the season, Adamola Lookman. Adam, any of your nominations on that list, or do you have any more to throw in?
No, I've got two to spring on us to discuss. So I've got Matteo Zaccagni, who I think has had a fantastic season at Lazio. But the one I'm surprised that wasn't on anyone's list is Mario Rui, just because I don't think anyone really expected those kind of performances. And I appreciate this is another Napoli play, unfortunately.
I know,
but just the performances alone. I mean, when you look at the ratings on the likes of FootMob, etc., he's been very high. He's very high on that list. And don't forget, like last season, I think he was a laughing stock. Everyone could not see him being the marauding left back that we saw for the majority of this season. He's come up, set up goals. He's been pinnacle in that defence, but he's just been magnificent. I think for me alone, on those reasons, he deserves this award because I don't think anyone anticipated those level of performances from him. He's been superb for Napoli. Really, I think one of the reasons why they've been so good defensively. I mean, I know Kim Min-jae will take the plaudits, but equally, with Mario Rui in that defensive line, he's been experienced, he's held the lines, and he's really helped it. But again, Matteo Zaccagni is another one that I've been really impressed with, done a fantastic job for Lazio. His goals have been really crucial. I'm surprised he hasn't, again, played as much for the Azzurri. I think he deserves more than the call-ups that he's had this season. But again, he's been fantastic, and I'm surprised there's not been more mention about his performances during the course of this season. But Rory, let's kind of dive into it. I mean, any other shouts that you think we should talk about?
So for me, the first two when I thought about this award were Orsolini and Lookman. I think if we start with Orsolini, he's got 11 goals and 4 assists. This is his highest goal involvements of his career so far. Like, this is his best season. And I think he's a player that people were really excited about when he was a lot younger. When he was in the under-21s, I think he was absolutely killing it for Italy, and people were super excited about him. He kind of lost his way a little bit. He's now 26 years old, so definitely his peak is ahead of him. But I think seeing Thiago Motta get the most out of him, and the partnership he managed to form with Barrow, and that whole attacking kind of clique at Bologna was really, really impressive. And I think he's become a player that has to be in the Italy squad. And again, this is biased from me because he was in my Fantacalcio team, so I did notice more what he was doing. But also, the other boys in the fantasy league were going, I can't believe you fucking bought Orsolini and he's this good. How has this happened? Like, I don't think anybody saw this season coming. And some of the goals he scored as well, and key goals, he scored a lot of winners, a lot of equalisers. Like, he's come up at big moments. And I think it's a player a player delivering even on promise. And I really like that. And I think under Motta, he could really, really push on and have another great season. I've already said I think Bologna next year get Europe. I think they're really going to make a push for it. They've brought in the head of recruitment from Napoli, I think. They brought in one of their head scouts from Napoli, and they've just been bought out by this huge kind of conglomerate, I think. So I think they're really a club on the rise, and I think Orsolini is going to be a key part of that. And this has been a season that's been outstanding for him. Also, my other player is Lookman. 13 goals and 6 assists in 31 games. Now, he did go very quiet towards the end of the season, but so did Atalanta. I think Højlund not being there and the attack moving around quite a lot between Zapata and the other guy, what's his name, Muriel. It wasn't quite given the same levels of energy that Lookman needed. He wasn't getting the opportunities. But I think the start of the season that he had, I remember us every week, it felt like we were talking about a Lookman goal. We were like, Adam Lookman again gets a goal and an assist, again gets a goal and an assist, gets 2 goals. And I just think his start to the season was fantastic. So I didn't want recency bias to rule him out of a nomination because I think his start was absolutely blistering. And he's a player that now, he did really well when he was in the Premier League. He was at Fulham, right? He was key in their Premier League campaign. I think he did pretty well. Played out in Germany, did pretty well there with RB Leipzig. So I think he's just a player that's proven himself in several leagues now. And like, if he can get a bit of a run together at Atalanta and have a few seasons here and really build, I think we could be looking at a genuinely very, very good player. So I think this season was outstanding and some of his goals were just glorious. So I wanted to give him a shout. But I do like your Mario Rui nomination because I think, he was a bit of a Romagnoli laughing stock, and he's become a very sought after left back.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say, I agree with you on Orsolini. Orsolini's been a player that I don't think many anticipated the performance that he has displayed this season, especially in that Bologna squad as well, because Bologna have really gone about their business really well. Lookman, agree with you as well. He's gone quiet second part of it and not helped by how that team has been performing. But I think he's adapted really quite well, really quite quickly, and there's been a lot of reports about how well he's done in the league. But I'm still feeling Mario Rui for this. I can't see beyond it. So unfortunately,
it's a very Napoli heavy show. It's a very Napoli heavy show, but it was always going to be. So congratulations, Mario Rui, surprising player of the year. Congratulations, Mario.
Congrats.
Auguri. And moving on from surprise player to surprise team. Now, my nomination, there's only 2. They've both got Z in their name. It is either Lazio or Monza. Curva Mundial Pod say surprise team Napoli. The North Curve says surprise team Napoli. Joe Spagnoli says surprise team Lecce. Fede Facco says surprise team Bologna or Monza. Footlol say surprise team Napoli. And Adam, any of those on your nominations? You got any others to throw in?
It won't surprise you, but I've got Napoli on there. Just because, unfortunately, they were a surprise. They weren't expected to win the title. But I think I'm going to go with you on this one, where I go Lazio. Lazio have been incredible this season. And I think I've already kind of given the context when I was talking about Sarri. But I think the way that they've gone about their business, they've created a lot of opportunities, scored plenty of goals, been defensively quite sound. And like when I put my kind of goals of the season, it's taken spectacular goals really to be like conceded by this Lazio team. It hasn't been necessarily tap-ins or like dubious decisions, shall we say. But I think they've been really solid. They've surprised a lot of their fan base. The fact that they've managed to maintain a top 4 finish in the end has been fantastic for a club that's been, I think, missing from the kind of top 4 mix for a while, it has to be said. You know, I can't remember the last time that Lazio were in that top 4 mix. It's been a while. And I think against that backdrop of Roma, you know, kind of rising, and they've gone about their business really quietly. They've nabbed, you know, ex-players like Pedro, brought him across, and he's been magnificent for them during the course of the season. Don't forget Ciro Immobile, as much as he's been the top goal scorer for them as well. But it hasn't been relied on necessarily for all of the goals, which is the difference. Whereas previous seasons, it was always about Immobile is the main goal scorer, whereas this time the goals have been spread out. Even like from a defensive point of view, they're scoring a lot more goals, midfield contributions. Sergei Milinkovic-Savic has definitely played a
Felipe
much more
Anderson
pivotal goal.
has had a very quietly good season as well. Felipe Anderson's got a good number of goals. A player that looked a little bit lost at West Ham, and he's come back home, and he's absolutely smashing it up. I think Zaccagni, as we've talked about, has been incredible since he arrived. I think, there's a bit of a less of a reliance on Immobile. It makes them a bit harder to deal with, a bit less predictable. And I think for them to finish second, and there was a point like they nearly threw it away at the end, and it was a lot closer than it should have been, but they still finished 4 points above Milan in fourth place, right? Yes. 2 points ahead of Inter. And I think, but there was a moment where we were like, they're comfortably the second best team in Serie A. They're comfortably number 2. And I think it's right that they got the second spot. It doesn't make it any less surprising because I did not expect it at all. But it shows you how surprising they've been, how surprisingly good they've been, because it feels like that's where they belong. They should have been second. They were the second best team. So the more time Sarri spends at that club, the better they're going to get. Like, he's not a manager who has 3 seasons like Mourinho, then it all falls apart. It takes him time. But when he gets there, it really, really does get good. And I think third season under Sarri is going to be super exciting because we've said that the title race is wide open. We could get 5 winners in 5 different years. Honestly, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. So I think, most surprising team of the year, Lazio. Congratulations, Lazio. Well, surprising team of the year. Next award coming up is Memeable Moment. Now, the best meme of the year. Now, I only have 2 nominations for this. One is from Rome and one is from Milan. Now, one of them involves the Polish player. Now, I don't know if you saw this, Adam, where Zalewski tries to jump the hoarding and just completely flips. Someone sent it to us on Instagram or on Twitter. I can't remember. But the Roma admin cut it to that. I'm guessing you want to know how I got here. And it's like that. And he just hits the thing as he goes over. Absolutely beautiful moment.
Brilliant.
But for me, the one I'm going to nominate, and then you can come in with any of yours, is Olivier Giroud's time-traveling brother. The interview with Olivier Giroud's brother, who looks like if Giroud had gone through a post-apocalyptic nightmare and come out the other end. I thought it was just... The first time I saw it, I thought, someone's put him on one of those face app things, where it's like, right, age me by 10 years. They look exactly the same. Like, what? Do you remember that? It was fucking incredible, right?
I do now. Just reminiscing about it, to be fair. But that was so fantastic because I kind of had to glance a little bit further and think, did Giroud just do this as a photo shoot? Was this some reality that he was supposed to play?
TV, with those hidden camera shows?
And then you're like, what? They were related? What? That's mind baffled, when they've got Einstein's theory written on the board and you're trying to work it out. It's that was incredible. But I don't think mine can really be topped off, to be honest. I was only going to put here David Nicola being sacked twice by Salernitana, really, as kind of memeable, because it's that is typical Italian football that we used to know back in the day. It's become a little bit more sensible, and then that happened. It happened. Because don't forget, this is the 3rd time, technically, for David Nicola that he's been sacked by Salernitana.
And he was fired and hired again within 24 hours. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable from Salernitana. You've got to love it. But I think I'm just going to take control of this one and say, memeable moment of the season is Giroud's self from the future giving him warnings of what not to do and what to do as his brother gives an interview on French television. So congratulations to the Giroud brothers. You win our memeable moment of the season. Congratulations. And the last award, the most coveted award, I believe, is the funniest moment of the season. The moment that made you laugh the most. We do have from... I'm trying to find the Serie A ones again. From Fede Falco, the Napoli Ultras giving Spalletti his steering wheel back when they won the Scudetto. Ibrahimovic and his speech at the end, saying to the Hellas Verona fans, "This is the highlight of your life, so be quiet." We have Dybala's penalty sending Juve to the Conference League from Joe Spagnoli. The North Curve, Juve cry-arsing about fairness. And Curva Mundial Pod, the whole Juve issue with the league. Adam, do you have any nominations before I chuck my 2 cents in?
It feels very Juve heavy in this section because I was going to go with VAR pissing off Juventus. It was after that 2-2 draw versus Salernitana and Turin, that fateful night where Milik gets sent off for taking his shirt off, even though that goal was disallowed for VAR. This despite also it not proving to be offside because there was no camera angles for that particular moment where Salernitana, I think it was Candareva, was playing them all onside, which was so funny. It was so funny. It had to happen in the most high-tech stadium in the league for that moment not to be there. But I think the whole context of like Milik being sent off, the whole argy-bargy, Allegri being sent off himself and walking down the tunnel. It was just epic scenes. I loved it because Salernitana got a point. And that's all I was craving for. Hold on, get this point. But just beautiful moment. But we also have to talk about Juventus fans cancelling their subscription to DAZN, because of the conspiracy against them. There's quite a few.
They are convinced that they can bankrupt the company. You know, they're convinced that if all of them withdraw it, they can bankrupt the company.
Exactly.
The levels of delusion are fantastic. I think Juve, they've got off lightly this show, haven't they? We're not really talked about them yet and just how piss poor they've been. I think just Juve as a concept have been hilarious this season. Chiesa at left back. Nothing really working. Vlahovic visibly hating every second of it. Allegri being backed after every major defeat. The Juve board coming out and saying, no, he's our man. He's just staying. To wind the Juve fans up even more has been fantastic. Them being caught, them not knowing if they're the Champions League or not. It has really been a beautiful season to be on the outside of Juve. And the moment I was going to put forward was another Juve moment, which was Moise Kean coming on to save the game and getting sent off 1 minute later, which was absolutely fantastic as well. A lot of great moments from Juve. I was also going to nominate, or I am nominating Mourinho being mic'd up to record the referees so that they couldn't lie about what he was saying. I think it was peak Mourinho. His ongoing battle with the officials this year has been absolutely fantastic. But I think I'm going to put forward as the funniest moment Juventus Football Club. I think they're just going to be the funniest moment. Juventus Football Club. Do we agree?
I agree. I was going to say, it's just Juventus, isn't it? It can't be any one of those situations. It's Juventus Football Club because they've given us so much joy this season. So well done, Juventus FC.
Congratulations, Juventus. You are the funniest moment of the season. Auguri, Juve. You did get a trophy. Nice. Well, there you go. We are finished with the awards of the year. Time flies when you're having fun, listeners. We are going to take a very short break and we're going to come back with mine and Adam's Serie A Teams of the Year. Spoiler alert, I already regret one of my choices. We will see you on the other side.
Hi, I'm Phil Brown, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And here we are, the final part of the final show of the season. It's emotional, guys. And it's time for me and Adam to go through our Serie A Teams of the Season, in which you can only pick one player from each team. And here it is, guys. You can see it on the screen. For people who are visually challenged and listening to us, I will take you through the team very quickly. In goal, we have Andre Onana. At left back, I'm playing a 4-3-3 again, guys. I'm very much a system-based manager. I keep it to the Premier League or Serie A. I keep the same formation. Onana in goal. Myler at left back. Centre-back partnership of Ibanez and Baschirotto. Right back, Singo. The three midfield, we have Benacer, Bonaventura, and Fratesi, who's now on his way to Inter. Exciting. And a front three of Zaccagni, Orsolini, and Osimhen. Now, Adam, looking at this team, any questions? Any issues?
No, I think it's fairly well balanced in that sense. I think, given the context of what we had to do, pick one from each club, which makes it that little bit more difficult / less biased, should we say? Singo, I think, he's had a fantastic season for Torino, and we haven't spoken a lot about Torino this season, but definitely one. The one doubt that I would have is Ibanez, because I'm not his biggest fan. I'll be brutally honest. As much as I think he's probably had a better season, it might not be helped by the defenders necessarily next to him / the goalkeeper behind him as well for him this season. And I think he's been pretty rash with some of his tackles, so hence why I'm less when you look at my squad, you can see I've gone for the other centre back, and we're not talking about Mancini. We're talking about Chris Smalling. So that's my
I'm now
preference
wondering. Honestly, I'm now wondering why I didn't pick Chris Smalling. But what I did notice with Ibanez, and I think as much as he gets booked every single game, and he's a bit hot-headed, he's definitely hot-headed.
Yes.
But he's amongst the league leaders on interceptions, tackles, and ground duels won. And his pass completion rate is pretty good. There's 88%. So I think he is very good at retaining possession. And I think he's allowed Roma to have a bit of control in games and build from the back when he's not being booked or sent off. I appreciate that he is still quite an angry man. But I think in that team, I think he's had a good season. I now feel like I should have picked Chris Smalling, though. I'm not too convinced about this one myself. But he's someone that, I've just been impressed every so often. So I thought when I was thinking of a Roma defender, he was the first one that came to mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we talked offline just before we were going into this that you could have picked a different left back, perhaps, certain Destiny Dodgy instead of Mela. But Mela is still a good left back, it has to be said.
I think what I've done is I've gone, right, if I was on Football Manager, who would I buy? And I would get Mila because he's a steady, good player. I've not actually thought about the season he's had. And I was looking again at his stats. So he got 6 goal involvements, 3 goals, 3 assists this year. He's averaging about 1.5 key passes per game. He's very good at keeping possession again, as you would expect with an Atalanta player. And he's really good at dribbling. His dribbles per 90, successful dribbles, he's getting 2 per game, which puts him around the 90th percentile amongst the league. So I think his ability to carry the ball down the wing and his ability to get forward and keep possession is very good. This is the decision I would have changed. I would have gone for a Dodge ahead of him. I even put a Dodge there and then for some reason changed it. Couldn't tell you why. No idea why. Just changed it. So Mila is there, but he's coming off at about the 70th minute mark to be replaced by a Dodge, I think.
No, otherwise though, Rory, I think it's a really good squad. I mean, Bonaventura, I don't think we've done him enough justice. We haven't spoken about Fiorentina that much. But I think he's someone that really came to his own recently, and certainly in that obviously final against West Ham, he was a player that looked really on it. He seemed like he really wanted to do it. Fratese's had his moments during the course of this season. I think Benacer, if he was less injury prone this season, certainly would have been seeing Milan a lot higher up that league. I think he's been really evident when he's gone out of the squad and not in that 11.
Yeah, you could see how much they missed him, honestly. And I think when he got the injury against Napoli in the second leg of the Champions League, didn't he? And he did his cruciate, I think, or he did one of his ligaments. And after that, you could see that Milan in the games following on just did not have that midfield control. And I was looking at every time I watch Benacer, it fumes me that he was at Arsenal and we sold him. It fucking winds me up because he is such a good player. And again, looking at his stats this season, he's only got 2 goals and 2 assists, but his expected assists is 5.8 across the season, which puts him in the 90s. He's one of the leaders in terms of the levels of assists he's making or creating. It's the strikers up front that aren't finishing them. And I think that kind of shows that how creative a player he is, as well as the fact that he's very good defensively and he's good at just being that metronome. His pass completion is 89%. So he just keeps the ball moving, keeps the ball ticking over. And as we said, when he was missing, Milan massively missed him. So I thought when I was building this team, he was one of the first players I put in there. I was like, Benacer is going to be in my midfield. I think he's been one of the best midfielders in the league for a while. And this season he's really kicked on. Mikel, if we're not going to get Caicedo, just go in for this lad, can we? Because I really, really would be quite happy to have him back if he would come back. Bonaventura, you're right. Been one of the key players in a great season for Fiorentina. Fratesi has just earned himself a move to Inter. Basically, it looks like that's going to get done. His numbers again this season were pretty crazy. 7 goals. He's got amongst 50% of his shots are on target, which is such a high percent.
It's crazy.
It shows that from all positions, he knows exactly where the goal is. He's able to get a shot on target. Yeah. Really been impressed by him, and he's good at progressing the ball as well. And then the front three, it had to be for me, Zaccagni, Osimhen, and Orsolini. I think they've been the 3 attackers that have stood out the most this year, really, in terms of like Zaccagni and Orsolini as the wingers that have stood out the most, and then Osimhen, we've talked about him. But I'm glad we get to talk about Zaccagni a little bit, because at Verona, there was signs of a good player there, but he's really kicked on since he got to Lazio.
Definitely. We've spoken about it on this pod, but Zaccagni has been so impressive for Lazio this season. Not only has he been doing all of the hard work, but he's contributing a lot more goals. I think he's been a little bit more clinical. And like I say, I'm just surprised that Mancini hasn't decided to give him more of a chance or more of a look in. Very much like on that right-hand side for you, Ruairi, Orsolini is another one that I suspected might get a call up, but he didn't actually get it. But again, I feel he's been undone there. I think he deserves a chance because of the performances he's demonstrated this season, especially when you look at the context of it's a Bologna side that's not expected to be in the top half of that league. And they've proved everyone quite badly wrong in terms of Thiago Motta going in there, doing a steady job as well. So lots of promising signs for Bologna and Orsolini, like you've already said on this show. And then there's nothing more we can say about Osimhen is there, to be honest.
He's there because you'd be thick to not put him there, basically.
Exactly.
It's been insane. But I do also, lastly, I think he might be in your team as well. I'm not sure, don't want to spoiler it, but I want to shout out Baschirotto as well, because he's just been incredible at the back. Alongside Samuel Umtiti at the back, I think he's been sensational. And in the air, very few people beat him in the air. He's now back on the farm up near Verona, I think, living his best life, helping the family, working out. That is a farmer's physique he's got there. That is a farmer's physique. It is insane. Love the man. Again, when I was building this team, he was one of the first names on there. I've absolutely loved him this season. So yeah, Baschirotto is in there. That is my team of the season. We will share it on Twitter, so you can give me abuse or praise me, whichever you please. Adam, it's time for you to share your team now.
Yes. I cannot wait for this, Ruairi, because I feel like this time it's a little bit more balanced than my Premier League 11.
your midfield last time was Keegan-esque, I'll be honest. I really appreciate it.
Challenging, wasn't it? It was a very challenging midfield, let's put it that way. But yeah, bear with me, listeners and viewers, while I go about trying to share it, because it is being a bit of a pain for me, but hopefully any second now you guys will be able to see it live on the screen. But also, Ruairi, I definitely have not got a goalkeeper by the look of things, but he's definitely there.
He's definitely
there. So, just for context, it is 4-3-3. And I'll start with the goalkeeper that is Casper the Ghost. No, he's called Vicario. Vicario from Empoli. I think he's been superb this season. I think he's on the lips of a lot of clubs if they move on their goalkeepers. I've heard the likes of Inter, Milan have been sniffing around. He's been solid, and he's got a call up to the Azzurri, well deserved. In terms of that defence, then I've gone with Stefan Posch from Bologna. He's been superb.
Very good shout. Only honestly, loan. Yeah, very good shout. Incredible. And he pops in with those goals. So fantastic. Now, I've gone a bit rogue here, Ruairi. This is probably where you're going to pick me apart. Scalvini. So Giorgio Scalvini, very highly anticipated centre-back that has got a lot to look forward to. I think he's going to be an incredible defender. Possibly, you might argue, maybe not had a strong season, but I think he's had a great breakout season. And that's the reason why I put him in there. Then I've got alongside him, not Ibanez, but it's Chris Smalling. So Chris Smalling's again. Smaldini. There he is.
Smaldini, as Joe Spagnoli says, Smaldini. But he's been incredible this season. So solid, so assured. And I think he's just that calmness personified. He is so calm in all situations. And I wish that Man United fan that was berated by fans that said Harry Maguire was better than Smaldini was here to lap it up. I think he'll be drinking all the milk that he could because, Smaldini definitely deserves it. Left back, he's a guy that I don't necessarily see eye to eye, but I can see what contribution he would do for this team. And just generally, I think he's had a good season, and that's Theo Hernandez from Milan. Player that contributes goals. He's good defensively. He's a shithouse. He does everything that you want from him, and that's why he's loved by Milan. And as you said, in terms of goal nominations, he seems to have a worldie in him every season. So for that reason alone, he's in my back line. So then we move into the midfield. Now, this is, again, quite an interesting one. So we've got Barella on the right-hand side of the three. I felt like Barella, again, superb season, full of pace, incredible kind of determination and grit at times. I think when there's been occasions where maybe the game's frustrated him, he's kind of brought himself up. He's still argumentative, let's put it that way. That part of his game is never going to disappear. But I love the kind of enthusiasm he brings to it. And I think he just brings that add of class when it comes to that attacking third as well. He can make moments happen. And I feel for that reason, he deserves a shout. Instead of having him in the back line, I've got Basharito from Lecce, who's had a few appearances for Lecce in midfield this season. He's, like we've said, the farm's physique. He is Mr. August when it comes to the calendar pullouts, isn't he? But he's very good in that midfield as well. He can do it. He can obviously header it. And I think he's a kind of player that keeps the pressure on that attacking third. I think there's been occasions where they've relied upon him to actually provide that outlet, but also he does pop in with some goals. So from set pieces, I think he's a very good
really
outlet
dangerous
there
from
as well.
Corners, very dangerous from corners.
And then alongside him on the left-hand side of the trio, I've got Milinkovic-Savic. We have spoken about him briefly when we've talked about him on this pod. But again, fantastic season by Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. I expect him to go this summer because he's going to be entering the last 12 months of his contract. And therefore, Lazio probably could do with the capital to reinvest in the squad. However, there has been rumours that he might see out the last 12 months. There was rumours earlier in the season that he might go to Juventus. Unlikely given their financial circumstances. But there has been even rumours, Rory, that he might even turn up at Inter. That would be incredible if they managed to secure that. I don't know if that's likely, but let's see what happens. And then slightly different kind of lineup in the front three. I've gone with Osimhen up top, but on either side, on the left-hand side, I've gone for Nico Gonzalez. Really do like him. I feel like he's really pushed on and he's contributed some really good goals this season. Very silky, he can play it on the inside, he can take on his man. I think he's got the whole package. I really do fancy him for next season. If no one snaps him up, that would be a travesty. And I think more blessing for Fiorentina as well, potentially. And then alongside him, I've got Dia, who's been getting these incredible goals.
I should have put a Salernitana player in there, really. I'm disappointed in myself.
I know, but I feel like he's justified. He's been incredible when it came to those moments. He's added that bit of quality. Piontek couldn't do it, but Dia has. And that for that reason, I mean, given the context of the club, where he is, where he's expected, I don't think there's going to be that anticipation that he would score as many goals as he has this season. There's been lots of rumours floating about that he might not end up at Salernitana by the end of this summer. He'll be elsewhere. And for that reason, that's why I've got that squad. So, Rory, feel free to pick at it, but I think it's fairly steady compared to my Premier League 11.
No, I think it's decent. Honestly, I really like the posh shout. I really like that as a shout. I've been really impressed by him at Bologna. Just there's been so many players that have stood out at that team this year at moments, and he's definitely one of them. Scalvini is a very good shout. I think despite it not it's been a good breakout season for him. He's had moments where he's struggled, but I think every player has. But I think I've heard his name a lot this season of a lot of people going, wow, this guy is good. And like when I have seen him, he looks like he's going to be a hell of a defender across the next couple of years. So yeah, I can understand him being in there, definitely. I really like the Dia shout because again, not only the number of goals, but the quality of the goals he scored.
Yeah.
He just hammers him into the top corner. Like, he absolutely kind of, some of those goals have really reminded me of, like, Podolski with his left foot, where it just looks like an absolute violent goal. I think Dia has that kind of finish in him, like a violent finish. It's been really impressed by him. And yeah, Nico Gonzalez is just, alongside Benaventura, has been like one of the key players for Fiorentina this year. So I think it's a very good team. And I like the Vicario shout as well, because we've talked about the standard of goalkeepers in Serie A in general being very high, and that most teams have very good goalkeepers, and Vicario has stood out amongst them. So I think, no notes, a very good team. Basketball in defensive midfield is always, dropping to 5 is always safety, right? You can always just drop to a 5 at the back and you're fine. You can play the John Stones role. You'll be fine. Nice. Well, guys, those are our teams of the season. That's it. The season is done. Ruddy hell.
Season review is over.
Is done. And like I did last time, really, there's no quote this time. I just again want to say, take the opportunity to say thank you for joining us this year. We tried these episodes separately as a Premier League and Serie A thing. Hopefully it worked. Hope you enjoyed them. It gave us a bit more breathing space to talk about each one properly. So I feel like sometimes in our shows we have to skip something, even though we always overrun. This time we're allowed to really go in depth and talk about it. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be appearing across the summer, as I said, at certain moments. We don't know when yet, so we can't tell you when. It will be at some point. But enjoy your summers. On Twitter, you can find us at Italian Anglo Pod. On Instagram, you can find us at Anglo-Italian Pod. You can find us on YouTube at the Anglo-Italian Pod. And go back, listen to episodes, listen to our interviews. Adam, anything to say before I send these people off until August?
I know, it's shocking, isn't it? It's shocking, but massive thank you for all of the support. Love to see all the new comments as well come along on our YouTube channel. It's been great seeing some of them going, you guys keep it up. It's been really enjoyable. So for that, I absolutely love doing the pod for those reasons, just to kind of help you guys understand the leagues and just vent some of our frustrations some of the time as well, it's fair to say, Rory. But yeah, hope you have a great break, whatever you're up to. Stay tuned. Make sure you know what we're doing on our socials, because we're planning a few things. But as you can imagine, it takes a lot of planning as well, and we need a break. So yes, be patient.
Yeah, guys, we will see you on the other side. Arrivederci.
Ciao, ciao.